Good evening, everyone, and thank you for joining us for this Young Professionals Forum presented tonight by the Black Professionals Association Charitable Foundation. We are here to talk about your right to vote. This is a nonpartisan forum. It is highlighting folks who are involved in community organizing, professional organizations, and in education. We have students on this panel. We are talking about our voices, our future, our vote to get out the vote. I am so excited to be part of this. My name is Tanya Strong Charles, and I am an executive producer with Spectrum News Ohio, and I am grateful to have been invited to be your moderator for this evening. So let's get right to it and start to tell you a little bit about who our panelists are this evening. Meredith Turner, Ifeolu Clater, Douglas Burnett, Tyshawn Simon, and Alana Garrett Ferguson. All of our wonderful panelists bringing their perspectives here this evening. We're going to have each of them tell you a little bit about their background and why they're on this panel tonight. So we begin with Meredith Turner.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you, Tanya. I'd like to thank the Black Professionals Association Charitable Foundation for this opportunity to be here with you tonight. As stated, I am on the National Social Action Commission for Delta Sigma Theta Sorority. By day, I work at the Board of Elections, so facilitating elections is my current business. I'm very active in the Cleveland community. We're all about public service and civic engagement, and I'm looking forward to engaging tonight in a thoughtful conversation with our future. Thank you.
And now I'd like to also introduce you to Ifeolu Clater. Can you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Hi, everyone. Good evening. My name is Ifeolu Clater. I am the Ohio campaign manager for All Voting is Local. We are a national nonprofit focused on breaking down unnecessary and discriminatory barriers to the ballot. I am a Northeast Ohio, a Cleveland native, Shaker Heights native, actually. I'm happy to be with you all and talking about how we all can be active and engaged in voting and protecting the right to vote. That's my everyday activity now.
Much Ifeolu. And now to Douglas Burnett. I want to point out that he was one of the two Black Professional Association Charitable Foundation scholars on our panel tonight. And we are so happy to have you with us.
Thank you, Ms. Tanya. Good evening, everyone. My name is Douglas Burnett. I'm a sophomore political science major at Morehouse College. Before I even move on with my introduction, I want to thank this organization for choosing me to be a scholar and also for choosing me to be a part of this panel. Some things that I do amongst many at Morehouse College, I'm part of NAN, which some may otherwise know as National Action Network. I'm also part of Morehouse College Moot Court team, which is the nation's only HBCU team and the top team in the nation as well. In addition to that, I serve on this initiative with the member schools of the AUC, which are Morehouse College, Spelman College, and Clark County University, where we essentially educate our peers on the importance of voting and civic engagement. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Douglas. I think you're getting upset with me. So yes, Burnett is his last name. We're so proud of you, young man. And we're going to move to another young man who's also wonderful, Tyshawn Simon, who is also one of the Black Professionals Association's Charitable Foundation scholars. And you're at Cleveland State. Tell us about Tyshawn.
Well, how's everyone doing? My name is Tyshawn Simon. I'm a sophomore at Cleveland State University, where I am currently majoring in mechanical engineering and minoring in math. On campus, I am a part of the LINK program. I'm also the vice president of that program as well. And I recently joined the National Society of Black Engineers. That I'm a part of that on campus as well, and I am also a PhD scholar.
Fantastic. Just two of the wonderful students, many wonderful students that the Professional Association Charitable Foundation supports. as they continue to cultivate new and upcoming talent, support community causes, and support one another's continued opportunities throughout the community, here in the greater Cleveland area and beyond. Alana Ferguson is our final panelist. Last but not least,
hi, everyone, and thank you for this wonderful opportunity. My name is Alana Garrett Ferguson. I'm a community organizer and policy advocate for Voices for Reproductive Justice. A lot of my work centers around eliminating barriers for Black women, femmes, and girls in the state of Ohio, and also boosting the civic engagement and participation of Black women voters. I am also the Democracy Fellow for NAACP, the state chapter, and the Ohio host for the Black National Convention and the Movement for Black Lives. Again, thank you so much for this wonderful opportunity, and I look forward to having a robust conversation.
and thanks to all of you for sharing a little bit about your backgrounds. I think we've illuminated many people in our audience just through that. The work that you're doing both in your professions, but also throughout the community and at school. So we are going to talk now about the importance of voting. Let's start with the foundation. And I want to go to Mr. Claytor about the fact that we are not just voting in a presidential election. There are other races that may actually impact our lives even more.
Sorry about that. So we are voting not just in the presidential, but we also are looking at congressional races, Ohio Supreme Court races, judicial races in our local county level, as well as Court of Appeals races. And so it's important for us to be knowledgeable and be aware of all these races that are on our ballots. Also, folks who are living in the city of Cleveland, Cleveland schools are on the ballot. If you were in I want to say the Cuyahoga County Library is on the ballot too. So if you were in those zones, if you were in those spaces, you want to research your ballot now so you know what candidates you might support or decide you don't want to support. But you want to do that before you show up at the ballot box and before your ballot comes in the mail, so that you are ready to fill out that ballot as quickly as possible and get it back to the Board of Election.
You know, Meredith, of course, you emphasize that, again, this is about everybody's right to vote. Again, we are here not for any partisan means. Based on your experience, what is it that you want to share about the importance of voting to our audience? You need to unmute. Okay.
All right. Thank you for the question, Tanya. I just wanted to share that a couple of days ago, I posted on Facebook, someone created some political yard signs with Breonna Taylor's name on it and George Floyd's name on it. And, these are the members of our community that were tragically killed. And the point of the post was to say that I'm voting for the ancestors. And I asked the question at large, what are you voting for? So voting is important because we got blood in the game. So many people gave their lives courageously to advocate for us to have the right to vote. And it's important that we exercise it now more than ever, when people are really trying to take us back generationally, as it relates to legislation, as it relates to ideals and morals. If you don't exercise the power in your voice by exercising your vote, they may be successful. So we need to look at history as a guide to direct us how we should be moving today. I'm so excited to be on this call with these amazing and talented young people. And I think I was invited because I'm young too. I feel that way. And so now more than ever, it's just important that we exercise the power in our voice collectively, because we stand on broad shoulders. We stand on broad shoulders, Tanya.
Yes, we do. And that's a wonderful way and to speak with in this panel. I want to begin with Douglas. When you hear Meredith and when you hear Mr. Claytor, Ifeolu talking about what's at stake here as a first-time voter, what are your thoughts?
Thank you for that question, Ms. Tanya. A lot is at stake, honestly. As it personally regards me, education's on the line. As you all know, I attend HBCU. HBCUs practically do produce excellent Black and African American students who go out and do many amazing things in the world, but yet we only receive a fraction of what other institutions, our counterpart institutions, receive. Also, things like healthcare, equality, justice, all these things are on the ballot. And I believe Ifeolu pointed out and talked about the Ohio Supreme Court race. There are two open seats on the Supreme Court this year, and I don't think a lot of people honestly realize how important those Supreme Court seats are. So those are just some of the things that are important to me in this upcoming election. And also the fact that these are unprecedented times. 20 years down the line, I can say that I voted in one of the most historical and unprecedented elections of all time.
Exactly. These are historical times. We keep hearing unprecedented, and unfortunately, every day something proves that point. I want to talk to Tyshawn because sometimes activism, being involved, can be quiet, and that is sort of where I want to meet you on that topic. Just tell me a little bit about how you're affected by what you've been seeing in the last year and a half, well, even since you graduated from high school, because you're only a sophomore right now, right? All right, so you're
Yes.
still very young. You've witnessed a lot. It's been traumatic for a lot of people. How's it affected you?
As I've seen so much going on like throughout the news and hearing a bunch of stuff, it's affecting me personally because it's seeing so many people that's having to put up with a lot of stuff and they look like me. So it's like right in my backyard because who knows, the same thing could happen to me no matter how good I'm doing or I'm trying to do, being in college or not. It could still affect me. So just seeing that, I noticed that like it's time for a change. So that's why, as a first time voter, that's why it's important for me to go out and make that change because it's just something that needs to happen because that's pretty much it.
Right, I'm thinking about you. Your major is mechanical engineering,
Yes.
right? So think about that. And this could be true of many professions, but particularly for mechanical engineering. Once you get into that profession, you don't see many people who look like you. And that's one of the reasons that the Black Professional Association exists, because you are pursuing careers we all need to know that there are other Black professionals who are going through similar things, and we want to be able to say, hey, we can make a difference. We're qualified to be here, and we want to be able to help someone else along. And also being a positive environment and being accepted. And you're on your way. You're getting a lot of support. And I'm so happy that you're part of this forum. But I think the most telling thing you said to me right now is just the way everything is affected. There's a need for a change. That's how you feel. And your vote can help you express yourself at the end of the day. I'm going to move to voter education. And I'm going to begin with Alana. Given that now we're past voter registration and early voting is underway, what do voters most need to know about how to vote?
Yes, thank you. So I think that voters need to know that early voting has started. And that early voting will continue throughout October. And you can early vote at the Board of Elections, and they have some of the most amazing COVID-19 protocols that I have seen. It is very safe, and so making sure that voters know that. Also, if you are voting by mail and you have sent your application, paying very close attention to the little details, filling it out exactly how it is actually stated, reading those instructions. We have seen a lot of ballot applications be returned and seen as invalid because of things like birthdays or not putting your identification number different things of that nature. So making sure that you are actually filling it out. And if you do happen to make a mistake, you do have 10 days to correct it and also send it back. And so making sure that you are successfully filling out that vote by mail application, and that also you are utilizing the different resources, whether it's the Cuyahoga County Board of Elections or the Secretary of State, to track your ballot, to make sure that you know that it is coming to you. Also, that you will need at least 2 postage stamps for your ballot in Cuyahoga County. And so being prepared for that as well, that is very, very important. And understanding again what is on the ballot and making sure that you understand and you have researched those candidates and what that is going to mean to your everyday life, for what actually we are voting on, especially with our judicial and our congressional seats.
Ifeolu, about the advantages and disadvantages of voting by mail and then options in that regard. There's a lot of misinformation out there. Some people would call it efforts to dissuade folks from voting. We're going to talk about voter suppression a little bit, so we're not going to go into that right now. But just the voting by mail, what we should keep in mind in terms of those advantages and disadvantages so we can take the right action.
Absolutely. So vote by mail, the first important thing is that it's really like a 2-step process. You have to fill out an application, send that back to the Board of Elections, or drop it in that secure drop box, which is in the parking lot of the Board of Elections, 2925 Euclid Avenue. So you have to send back the application, they send you the ballot, and then you send your ballot back or drop it off at the Board of Elections. It's important to realize that one of the things that can cause your ballot to be invalid is if you don't sign the envelope that comes with it. Or again, Alana talked about the postage. You want to make sure that you're putting postage on it and that you sign that actual envelope that it comes in also. It's like a second step of verification. So we want to make sure that we're doing that. The advantage is you can fill out your ballot at home. You can do it at your leisure. You don't have to think about business hours and when the board is open. The secure drop box is accessible 24 hours a day. Those are the advantages. The disadvantages, you have to make sure you get it back. The postage is not paid for, so either buying a stamp or dropping it off, waiting for it to come in the mail. When you are returning that ballot, if you are mailing it back, it has to be postmarked by the day before Election Day, so Monday, November 2nd, and it needs to arrive at the Board of Elections within 10 days. So it's important to realize that some of those things aren't quite in your control. If you take it into a post office, you can make sure that they postmark it. And so we don't want to scare folks, but we also want to make sure that if you are mobile and you can make it to the post office, you can probably make it to that secure drop box to drop off your ballot in the secure drop box. So there are advantages. Like I said, you can vote from home. The other thing I want to highlight, you can drop off anyone's absentee or vote by mail ballot application, but you cannot drop off anyone's ballot. So you can take your friends, you can drop off all your friends' vote by mail ballot applications. When they get their ballot, it either has to be the voter themselves or a close family member that returns that ballot. So it's important that we realize that we're following the rules and that we are making sure that everyone's vote is counted and we are just following the laws when it comes to vote by mail.
That's excellent. I'm so glad you're on this Young Professionals Forum. Thank you so much. I'm going to go to another young professional in just a moment, and that's going to be Meredith Turner. But before we get there, and Meredith, you may be the one to we brought up such important reminders, the fact that you have to take your ballot. You can go in a group, you can drop somebody off, but you can't take somebody else's ballot to the Board of Elections or to a drop box. Very important. But also he mentioned postage. And so the postage in Cuyahoga County might be a little different than the postage for another county. My understanding is that it's 70 cents. 70 cents to mail your ballot back in Cuyahoga County. So Meredith, I'm going to turn it to you. Is that the correct information that I am sharing in that regard? And then I want you to pick up on if you can vote and if you did request an absentee ballot, because you've also heard Alana talk about this. You've had Ifeolu, but we're past that process. You should have done that already. They're already mailing out the ballots. But if you requested an absentee ballot, but you say, oh, no, I don't trust what's going on. I want to go inside and vote, then what can you do? I leave it to you, Meredith. You're muted. That's okay.
Sorry. The information that you shared is absolutely correct. 70 cents postage in Cuyahoga County. In other counties, their ballot composition may be heavier, requiring more postage, but in Cuyahoga County, 70 cents is correct. It's so enlightening to hear them talk about this subject matter so easily. A lot of people are intimidated by this process, but it's a really simple process, but there are some nuances. So, as it relates to making sure that your application is completed properly, once you get your ballot, that the ID envelope is completed properly, and all those things are highlighted in yellow to help guide you to make sure that you are filling in the proper information. So if you have requested a ballot by mail and you're getting a little anxious, you're concerned, you're not quite sure if the ballot is going to get to you in time. And I work in the absentee ballot department. So I'm fascinated to listen to the understanding of these concepts because I'm actually executing them. You can go into the Board of Elections during the early voting period and cast the ballot in person without penalty. We will simply suspend the previous ballot, ask you to destroy it, and allow you to cast your ballot on that day. So there's a lot of conversation about, voter fraud and people voting twice. With our system here in Cuyahoga County, it is impossible for you to cast the ballot twice. Even though you still have that ballot outstanding that you did not cast because you decided to show up in person and vote, we will suspend it in our system and we will assign you a new ballot code attached to your name. And there's no way that even if you decided or someone else got your ballot after you discarded it and decide to mail it in, we would know immediately by your record that ballot was invalid and it would not count. So you can only vote once, despite, some of the propaganda going around. But if you decide to show up on election day on November 3rd and vote in person after having requested a ballot by mail and received it, they will require you to vote provisionally.
So the lesson here is that we don't want to wait until the day before to mail in anything with that postmark, as Ifeola was talking about, and we don't want to wait till the day of to show up. There's too much at stake for everybody in this country, right? So waiting till the last minute typically doesn't go over well for a lot of the major decisions that we have in life in general. And we just don't want to risk that. And again, that is across communities, across the country. I am interested in what our students on this panel think about what they've heard so far. I want to begin with Tyshawn. Has any of what you've heard affected your choice on how you will vote?
I'd say no because I set time aside for me to go and vote in person. But overall, from what I've heard so far, it's very informative because this is my first time voting. So, and I hear and to hear the different processes that you can do to go vote is eye-opening because I never really got into politics. So seeing that the importance of it is something that's really standing out to me.
That's great. Can I ask, are you on campus or taking classes virtually? Because I thought Cleveland State was doing both.
Well, majority of my classes are on campus, except for one.
And may I ask what you're hearing on campus just in terms of the intention to vote, the importance of voting? Are people talking about it?
No, not really.
I'm surprised.
Yeah, it's right now it's around midterm time, so that's all you really hear about what people are talking about is midterms.
Right. Well, we want them to think about the life in that regard. And so you are here and you can definitely spread that message that midterms are definitely important, but we want them to also uh, think about their voter rights and long term, long term, not just the midterm. But that's great. Thank you, Tyshawn. And we know you're going to go vote. So bottom line, if they don't go vote, that's on them. You're doing what you need to do.
Yeah.
Douglas, what do you think? Because you're very active on campus with trying to raise awareness about issues. What do you think about what you've heard?
All of it is enlightening. I think each and every single panelist that went before me kind of touched on everything. I mean, what I think is the most important thing that people do, and what I try to educate people to do in my conversations is, as soon as you get that ballot, if you're choosing to vote by mail, just turn it in. I mean, just fill it out and turn it in, because it's so important and it's so critical that we get these ballots in and that we get them counted. So I think they all did a very fine job of explaining the importance of and the logistics of how to vote by mail.
Just outstanding. We are right on time, and we are going to move to the topic of voter suppression, which I think will also be educational for folks. We're going to start with Ifeolu Clater and talk about historical voter suppression and what that is. Because some people, when they hear about this, they, again, with misinformation campaigns, think, well, is that a real thing? It is a real thing.
Yes, it is 100% very much a real thing. And part of why I have this sign here, the 866 Our Vote sign, because if you have an issue when trying to go vote, making sure that you call and report that. This is a hotline that's staffed every day already, even though we're in early voting now. So making sure that you can report any issues. But historically, ever since African Americans or Black people, us, have been given our freedom and given, in theory, the right to vote, we have been disenfranchised with grandfather laws saying, like, if your grandfather couldn't vote, then you were not allowed to vote. Literacy tests, ridiculous literacy tests, reading the preamble to the Constitution, memorizing the preamble to the Constitution, how many bubbles are in a bar of soap, how many beans are in a jar, just ridiculous questions that were used to keep Black people from voting. And also, when we look at the history of felony disenfranchisement, those laws also were introduced to incarcerate Black people and keep slavery in place with that type of free labor, but also remove their right to vote. So it's so important to realize that this is a systemic thing, that when we look at the history of John Lewis, who just passed, and when we watch Selma and think about the history of Bloody Sunday and all that had in place, it's so important for us to go out and vote, because people literally got beaten and killed for our right to vote, because there were systems set up and people in place who set up these systems to stop us from voting, to stop us from having our voice and our right to vote. So it's even more important that we exercise that right every day, every election, every opportunity that we get.
Thank you for pointing that out. But I also want to talk about voters being purged from election cycles. And I actually want to go back to you, Ifeolu. Before going there, though, I want to point this out. Many, many years ago, when I was a young professional, I had the great opportunity to interview Representative John Lewis. And he was so humble, right, and engaging. And to know that this is a man who, excuse me for being so graphic, but it's what happened. We all know, literally got his head beat in so that we can all be here today and go vote, hopefully without suppression. And yet this is still going on. So every day of his life was spent trying to make life better for others and trying to make America live up to its promise. And I think that all of us have, we all have the responsibility to keep that alive. Thinking about his sacrifice and the sacrifice of many, many others, because not everybody is well known, but they have made huge differences in their communities. So speaking about voters being purged from election cycles, a lot of folks may not understand this. I want you to talk about this, and then Meredith, if you can jump in after Ifeolu, just gives us a quick overview of that.
So yes, in Ohio, we have a system of voter purging, and certain actors will call it keeping the rolls clean and making sure that we have clean election rolls and secure elections. But if a voter does not vote in a 6-year period, they're sent a postcard, and it's kind of like from the Secretary of State's office. It says, "Hey, are you still living here? If so, send this postcard back so that we know that we can keep you on the voter rolls." But then you'll be set if you're not voting in a 6-year period, you're set on an inactive voter list and set to be purged. So on the one hand, the explanation is saying it's maintaining clean election rolls or voter rolls. On the other hand, this system is prone to error. Last year, there was an article about how the executive director of Ohio's League of Women Voters ended up on the voter purge list. And when you think about, okay, this person is literally influencing policy on making sure people are registered to vote, we know that she is not an inactive voter, but somehow she ended up on the voter purge list. So it's important for us to realize who this affects. A lot of times this affects us, a lot of our parents or grandparents who showed up to vote in 2008 for Obama, and then maybe they didn't show up in 2012, and they tried to show up in 2016 and couldn't vote. Or veterans who might have been overseas and didn't vote from overseas while they were away, didn't cast an absentee ballot, might have been purged from the rolls. There are a lot of people who were purged either for inactivity or an error. And so if we're looking at these errors and looking at how many thousands of people, and it is thousands of people that can be on these rolls unnecessarily or by accident, we want to make sure that we're checking our voter registration, because we don't want to show up on election day and find out that we're not registered anymore because we didn't respond to a postcard that we got a year ago. So that's the biggest thing to look at, making sure that you're going to the Secretary of State's website, voteohio.gov, and checking your registration. You can also check your registration at the Cuyahoga County Board, or whichever county you live in, you can check your registration at that county board of elections. Cuyahoga County is 443vote.com. So making sure that we're going in and checking our voter registration, also making sure that when we're looking at checking our voter registration, checking our polling place. Because I lived in the same place since 2008, and my polling place changed this year when it was different from the primary and changed for the general. So making sure that we're making that plan and that we are actually participating in voting and participating regularly, so we cannot possibly end up on that inactive voter list.
Exactly, the inactive voter list. Meredith, do you have anything to add to that?
I really don't. He's amazing.
He did cover what I thought he would, but let me ask you about this, given that I have you right there, and you are with the Board of Elections, but also then, you're involved in other efforts as well. Can you talk about the security of our vote?
I absolutely can. It's pretty exhausting, all the gymnastics and aerobics that we go through to make sure that this process is safe. I can talk about it from the perspective of the work that I do. In the absentee ballot department, we do everything from, sending out vote by mail applications. I know everybody received this, all registered voters, I'll say, received applications from the Secretary of State's office. They've been sending them out all summer. People were receiving applications from third party organizations. I mean, everybody just really wanted to make sure that if voting by mail was a choice for you, that you had access to an application. So we're not sending applications from the Board of Elections unless you request it from us directly. Otherwise, there's just been a plethora of organizations, be it the NAACP, the Secretary of State's office, I forget all of the Center for Voter Information. They've just been flooding communities with absentee ballot applications. Now, I guess that's a good thing on one hand. It can also be confusing for people who think that, why do you keep sending me this application? I already sent my application in, I'm waiting for my ballot. Where's my ballot? So we manage that process as well as rejecting or, letting voters know that there was something wrong, information missing from those applications. If it's any of the things that like Alana mentioned earlier, like, a birthday missing or an ID missing, and you receive a letter, you can give that information over the phone. You can call us and you can give that information over the phone, and we can make the correction and get your ballot out. If it's something like an invalid signature missing, then you would have to sign the 11S form that was sent to you, so we can now get your signature on file again. So we have, multiple checks and balance systems just as it relates to the application process. Now, when we talk about the ballots, we have a vendor. It's Midwest. Midwest is the vendor that prints our ballots. And so one of the things that I've been doing lately, in addition to coordinating nursing home voting and voting for people who are incarcerated in the Cuyahoga County jail system, also received applications from the Cuyahoga County Juvenile Detention Center. I have two 17-year-olds right now who want to vote, but they're on lockdown. It's crazy. And they turn 18 on the 30th and the 31st of this month, respectively, but they still want to vote. So we're going to make it happen. And I'm happy that I'm actually facilitating that process. Anybody that knows me knows that I go the extra mile. This place at this time, I keep asking God, what's going on? Because I'm tired. My phone don't stop ringing. I get messages through all forms of communication. And I do my best to try to be there for people, to be transparent. If you have a question and you're not getting through at the Board of Elections, I'm going to give you my number. It's 216-443-6471. I also put it in the chat. But as it relates to, once the ballots are mailed, again, that's coming straight from the vendor. Depending on when you submitted your application, depends on when your ballot is going to be mailed to you. We've literally been receiving applications for the general election since April. People were anxious, with the primary election and everything going on around COVID. They started sending applications in immediately. So we've been processing applications all summer long. So we get to a certain point and we send that information out on a data file to the vendor for printing. So I know that people are starting to receive ballots. If you submitted your application somewhere around September, you still may not have received your ballot. I haven't received my ballot yet. And I know my ballot was processed on September 17th. But again, you can go to our website, you can track your ballot, you can track when it was mailed, you can track when it's returned. And if any of those methods are not working for you, you can call me at 216-443-6471, and I'll try to get an answer for you or pass you on to somebody that can help you. But anytime a ballot is touched, a Republican and a Democrat is present. No one is ever alone with a ballot at any time that it's being processed. We have secure floors. You cannot get in without a key card. And it has to be a Democrat and a Republican present at the same time opening those doors. So it's a lot of nuances to run an election. I don't want to bore people. But I will say that, I'm there. I do my best to try to make sure that I'm communicating, how hard we're working to keep the process transparent and clean for people. I make myself available to try to problem solve and navigate through some of these issues so people don't feel so, like it's out of their control. But we are doing a really good job at making sure that this election is transparent. And again, if you have any questions about a process and you're not getting through to a live person, you can call me at 216-443-6471.
I'm so proud of all of you and your outstanding work. I do want to pick up on something you said, if you can give me a brief answer. And then I just want to know also if Alana has some comments that she wants to share regarding this conversation about voter suppression before we wrap this up and move on to the next area. But you talked about young men who are on lockdown and juvenile detention. There's a lot of confusion about who can vote. If somebody's in juvenile detention, if somebody has been to jail in the past, but they're no longer in jail. So can we get some clarity on that? And can we do that somewhat quickly just so that we can cover all these topics? Meredith, let's start with you.
Yeah, absolutely. So if they are incarcerated and they have been indicted but not convicted, they have the right to vote. So if they send an application to us, we are going to process it, and we are actually going to deliver it to the Cuyahoga County Jail or the detention center.
Okay. All right. I saw Ifeolu. Did you have something you needed to add to that?
I just wanted to echo that because I think there are so many people who don't understand that voting laws are by state, and so they'll hear that felons can't vote, and that's not necessarily the case in Ohio. If you are not currently incarcerated serving time for a felony, you can vote in the state of Ohio. So if you have a felony conviction on your record, but you were recently returned to society, then you can vote in the state of Ohio. If you're on probation or parole, you can vote in the state of Ohio. So it's so important because there are even people who work in our criminal legal system. Sometimes people have told me that their probation officer, their parole officer, told them they can't vote, and that's not accurate. So you want to check with somebody like Meredith who works at the Board of Elections. There are some certain circumstances with people who are in community-based correctional facilities who may not be able to vote, but typically, if you are not currently incarcerated serving time for a felony, you can vote in the state of Ohio.
And to circle back to one of your other points, Ifeolu, these are folks who also need to check and see if they've been purged from voter rolls.
Right.
So that you explained that so well, but that's a reminder. Alana, I want to know, in regard to the topic of voter suppression overall, is there something that you want to share?
Yes, actually, and it kind of adds to what we talked about with Congressman John Lewis, and the fact that 7 years ago, in August, unfortunately, one of the most pivotal points of the Voting Rights Act of 1965 was repealed in a case called Shelby versus Holder at the United States Supreme Court. And what it did was it struck down Section 5, which stated that states that had a history of discrimination and voter suppression had to pass a pre-clearance with the Department of Justice before changing election laws. And so in 2013, our Supreme Court ruled that that was no longer necessary. So that meant that about 9 states, and mostly in the South, that had a history of voter suppression would now be able to change their voter laws, and they would not have to go through a pre-clearance. And actually what we saw from that case that was so monumental is that even in other states that might not have historically had the same type of history of voter suppression, after 2013, we saw across the United States a rise in voter purge happening in various states, a rise in voter ID laws, a rise in just very strict subtle ways of voter suppression, whether that was closing different precincts, limiting different ballot boxes, making things a little bit harder for people. And so really just letting people know that that was only 7 years ago, that's something that John Lewis marched for and that he died for was that Voting Rights Act of 1965. And last year we did have our U.S. congressional system, our state senator, our U.S. senators, our U.S. Congress women and men, they did actually have a proposal to bring some of those provisions back, and it was stricken down. And so making sure that we understand that this election is so much very important. It really is about voter rights, because we would like to restore that, especially in the late Congressman John Lewis honor, because that was something that he advocated and he fought tirelessly for. And with this many judicial races and judicial candidates on a ballot, and understanding that so often the way that a Supreme Court justice is nominated or picked is from them having prior experience on an 8th district or any type of district court of appeals or another Supreme Court in their state. And so these are the people that are oftentimes are picked to sit on that highest form of court. So we as citizens need to make sure that we're doing our due diligence in electing those people and doing our research, and are really fighting to restore and to really honor Congressman John Lewis' legacy, because the Voting Rights Act does need to be reinstated. Thank you.
Historical perspective. Tyshawn, I'm going to call on you here for a specific reason, because I love what you've said about, hey, I wasn't really involved in politics, but with everything going on, I'm involved and I know my vote counts. But you, in listening to this conversation, just because I have the advantage of being able to see what the panelists are thinking without everybody else thinking about it, what do you want to ask about that you think would be helpful for you to go back and share a message with folks you know? And the reason I'm asking that is because you were specifically concerned about voter registration.
I would say, how would you go about teaching the the importance of voting? Because I know I've talked with plenty of people who they don't think that their vote counts, or they already feel like the voting thing is already rigged or so. And there's also many people who just don't know about it. Like, they don't know what they're voting for, or what the different meanings of things besides the main presidential election. So when it gets down to like the House or Senate, you voting on those, and then like the different issues that's going on that you have to vote for. A lot of people don't know the specifics of it, so they just leave it to it is what it is, basically. So that's my question on how to get that education out there to other folks.
Alana, do you want to answer that?
Sure. I think some of the best things, as because of technology, and of course we live in Cuyahoga County, but I believe other counties have this feature. You actually can download a sample ballot. When you download a sample ballot, it shows you every single name of people who are running. It also shows you those different races. And so once you have that, you can go and do research to see what it is that an Ohio Supreme Court justice do. What is the Court of Appeals? What does your state rep and your state senator? You can actually look that up. There are many different tools and resources. A lot of people use Ballotpedia because it is broken down into very common language, so everyone can pretty much understand it. But voting is important, and the way that I have found it to be easy to explain it to people is kind of giving them examples of what these people are doing when they are elected and when they are in office. And so sometimes we look at very high profile cases, and we see them and we're very emotional. And so sometimes reminding people of like, hey, if you go back and you look in this newspaper in this case, you can see that this was a judge who was involved. This was the prosecutor that was involved. These are the cases, and these were the justices who made this decision. And so really showing people that this does affect your everyday lives and reminding them of those times, and also where to go and get the research. So many of us, even here, are working for different advocacy groups that oftentimes around elections we put out on different websites, like a scorecard or a track sheet that shows you this is the trajectory that this judicial official or this state senator or someone has also, this is their record, and this is how they have followed along. But also making sure that you are staying informed and subscribing to these different agencies and these different advocacy groups, and just having regular conversations with people and reminding them of exactly what these people do. Like your state senators and state reps, they make laws. That is literally their job. And a judge's job is to interpret those laws. So when we have issues around why is this a state law, and it could be something as simple as marijuana laws, which a lot of young people like, or the fact that there was a bill in our legislature to reimburse student loans for people who go to law school and decide to work 5 years in the public sector as either a prosecutor or defense attorney. Who would actually make that decision is state senators and state reps. And so understanding those type of nuances and having conversations with people, and really doing your research is a really good way to show that, hey, this is something that actually affects your everyday life.
You have done your research, and we are grateful that you are one of the young professionals on this panel because you've given us a lot to think about. And, we've got some good resources. We've got 443vote.com, which Ifeolu just shared, and vote411.org, which is easy to remember, that you can look at a sample ballot. You can get that information. We've got 2 topics to wrap up our evening for those who have been kind enough to join us tonight. But on that issue, I do want to mention Douglas Burnett, because you mentioned judges at your introduction, I think. And so as a young man, to know that, hey, you need to know who your judges are, because your judges can affect your life in your community, in your region, in your state. Tell me about why that's important to you.
Yeah, well, I think we kind of seen a national display with the unprecedented Breonna Taylor case. People, were kind of like searching for answers. I didn't know this happened, or I didn't know this was the process. But those are judges, those are the prosecutors, those are attorney generals who make those decisions. And if something was like that happened, God forbid, here in the Cuyahoga County, those would be the same judges that we go and vote on. They sentence these people. They are the ones who put these people behind bars. So it's very, 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 very important that we use our resources and we use technology. We have technology at our right in our hands, and we can just search the candidates, see what they have done, see what their background is, to get a better understanding of who we are voting for, because it is very important, and people do not realize the sense of urgency and the sense of importance that it is behind these judicial seats.
Sense of urgency, and for sending that message on to other folks in your age group. As we go to this topic about Election Day, Meredith, what should voters do if they're being told if they're at the wrong precinct, or that they should vote provisionally?
They should go to the right precinct. I know that a lot of people often, they have their voting plan. They have X amount of time to, execute this plan. But there are all kind of resources to help you in advance, especially at our website, to help you determine where your polling location is. In addition to that, every voter gets a card that tells you where your polling location is. So I hope that people do not end up in that situation where they're in the wrong polling location. 443vote. You can go there, you can put your address in, and it'll tell you where your polling location is. But if that does happen, I would implore you, please, if you have time, just go to the correct polling location so your ballot can count. If you insist upon voting at the location where you are, they'll give you a ballot. It would just be provisional, and it would not count.
And they feel intimidated because we've been hearing about poll watchers, and it sounds very intimidating. I want to know what you advise in that regard.
I
was actually Ifeolu, but you can.
Oh, okay. No. Go ahead.
Ifeolu, voter suppression.
Yes. It's important to realize that the only people that there are people who, whatever can happen. I don't want to scare people because we don't know what's going to happen. We don't know that there will be people trying to intimidate voters. But we also know that won't happen. You know what I mean? But the important thing to realize is that when it comes to people who might be at the polls, it's up to the precinct election officials to make sure that you have a safe and clear path into your polling location. It's up to the precinct election officials to make sure that you are not being followed once you leave your polling location. It's up to the precinct election officials to make sure that you're not being heckled, and people can't carry firearms into a polling location. I know that there's a lot of propaganda and a lot of people can be scared, but it's up to the precinct election officials to make sure that these issues are not issues that you have to experience at the polls. And if you do, we have 866-HOUR-VOTE, and I'm one of the people who mans that hotline. And we make sure, and we're working to make sure voter advocates across the state are working to make sure that we all have a safe environment in which to vote. But it's important to realize that voter intimidation is a federal crime. And while we may not be excited to call the police, it's up to the precinct election officials to make sure that we are that we have a safe environment in which to vote, where we don't have to feel intimidated. And some of our voter protection groups, like All Voting is Local, the League of Women Voters, Common Cause, Universalist Unitarian Justice of Ohio, we are working to recruit folks to make sure that there's peace at the polls, recruiting clergy members, social workers, and other folks, other voting rights advocates, to make sure that you have a safe environment in which to vote. And so if there's an issue that you see, please call. But it's important to realize that this is like, if you experience somebody threatening you, or if you feel threatened going in, that you tell your election officials, because it's their job to make sure that you have a safe environment and that you don't have to feel that way coming in or going out. So even if it's the most like benign issue, call 866 our vote, because we want to keep that data to make sure this isn't an issue we see across the state. Yeah, that's the biggest thing I can say.
Thank you. And I know Douglas also has a comment about this regarding election protection. Can you share?
Sure, yes. I just wanted to bring about the sense of urgency, how important it is to access and to utilize that tool. Some individuals who are part of that hotline that Ifeolu brought up happen to also be administered by the Lawyers Committee for Civil Rights under Law. So oftentimes when you call that number, those are trained individuals, and sometimes they can be attorneys who will help you have the appropriate responses on what to say in order to combat the situation if you do feel like you are being impacted by it and currently experiencing voter suppression.
Thank you. We certainly hope that no one who is with us tonight undergoes that or has to experience that. And we just hope that folks keep the peace, right? That they have wisdom and calmness and respect one another. That is what certainly my prayer is. And I know that's the hope of everybody on this panel, because we're about empowering people, letting them know what they need to know to go vote. So we're going to talk about post-election. We've covered it all, the lead up. Until election day. They should get everything done before that, right? There are opportunities to go and vote early. The election is underway right now. To get your mail-in ballot, to fill it out correctly, to drop it off, or if you don't like that, to take the absentee ballot, take it inside, as Meredith said. They'll destroy the absentee ballot and you can vote in person early. And Alana has told you why you should be voting early, because people will take rights away if you don't stand up for them. And we've heard from our young people who are excited about their first time voting and wanting to encourage others and inspire others to take advantage of that. So post-election, and I am going to go to Alana, any thoughts about the fact that we likely will not know election night, November 3rd, and the president on that?
So what in Ohio we have learned that we can suspect is that there is about a 21-day period that will take place in which we will not know. And during that 21-day period, we are advocating and asking for folks all across the state to really make sure that at your local board of elections, every ballot is being counted. I don't think in Cuyahoga County, I don't suspect we would have that issue. Our board of elections have been doing a great job. They actually daily, they release a report on every single that they've counted and processed ballots, whether it's absentee, early votes. They keep that updated. You can see it. They're very transparent. But what we understand is this is an issue that is also across the state and nationally because of the increase of absentee, because of just some of the confusion that has happened. This is not a regular election year. And so in the state of Ohio, it has been predicted that there will be at least a 21-day delay. And what people really can do during that time is make sure that that if there are people who haven't returned anything, that they are actually returning it and that you are really advocating for your local Board of Elections to make sure that every single ballot is counted, and stay encouraged. There are many groups. There's a conglomerate of organizations that have come together in the state of Ohio called the Fight Back Table, in which we will be doing peaceful and empowering actions during that time in the 3 big cities across the state of Ohio, to really encourage folks to understand that, yes, the election is technically over, but we still have a lot more work to do. And we have another election locally that's coming up next year. And so really using that time to mobilize and empower folks, and also make sure that we are sending a message that every ballot needs to make sure it is counted.
All of you have dropped some knowledge on us tonight. We are going to open it up to our viewers, participants who have joined us, to listen to all of you who have dropped some knowledge on us tonight, for sure. But before we do that, I want our students to give us some takeaways from this, just to take 10 or 20 seconds to let us know what you're thinking and what this has meant to you to be on this panel, knowing that you're inspiring others, because we are inspired by you. So I want to start with Tyshawn. Oh, I'm not seeing Tyshawn. Okay, so Douglas, we're going to go to you. Douglas Burnett.
And this is such an unprecedented election. It is quite historical. And when I was drawn to think about this election, the importance, I thought about, this is my first time voting. It actually drew me to think about my great grandmother. She recently passed away about 4 or so years ago. She was born in 1918. And to think that when she was born at the age of 18, she was not able to vote. Now I'm 18, now I'm going on 20, and I'm able to vote. But she lived through such a monumental time. It really speaks to the fight, like individuals who Alana mentioned, like John Lewis, who all literally worked tirelessly and were beaten, were hung, were killed just to ensure that I could be able to vote. And it's quite disrespectful, in my opinion, to not uphold those individuals' legacy, because we think about it all the time. We see movies where people say, people weren't able to vote. They had to do these crazy literacy tests and just all type of irate things that are, just suppress someone's vote. And now all the fight and all the struggle that individuals who went before me, I'm now bearing and can be able to vote. And so it's very important to do so.
Did you hear me?
No, I didn't hear you.
I said, what are you going to be when you grow up? And I'm not being facetious. What is your intent for your life right now? Because I think everybody sees such great things for both you and Tyshawn. What are you looking to do?
Well, I have a career. I have a desired career interest to be engaged publicly in terms of law. I would like to be a prosecutor and go on to assume office either in Congress or the Senate, and just work my way up until I reach my goal. But that is what I like to do. I really want to be engaged with the public, and I do a lot of that stuff now, just helping people by advocating for them and educating them, because it's what I like to do. It's my life's mission, is to help people.
Well, I hope I have the chance to vote for you, because I definitely will. Thank you so much, Douglas Burnett.
Thank you.
Wonderful. I want to say that Tyshawn, we lost him, but we appreciate his participation. It was brought to my attention, and we learned this from Tyshawn, that the folks that he was on campus with, and of course they're very concerned, about their grades, and he's in engineering, and that's a very intense major. I understand that, but that there's just not a lot of information being shared on campus about voting. So everything that we talked about tonight, clearly a lot of people still need to know. So anything that we can do to spark those conversations will definitely be helpful for everybody exercising their rights. Does anyone want to jump in about that and efforts to get out the vote? Ifeolu?
Yes, one thing that I think that people, especially if you're on campus, something you can do, that your classmates are following you on Instagram, also on Twitter. literally something I did, I got on my phone, hit screen record, and just Googled check my voter registration Ohio, and showed how easy it was to go to the Secretary of State's website and look up my voter registration. And once you get there, you can just tap on your name and it will show you where your precinct polling location is and what your districts are for your federal representation and your state representatives, whether that be state rep or state senate. So just that little bit of information, even if that's showing folks vote411.org, where you can see your sample ballot and see a questionnaire that different candidates have responded to. Those are some really easy things to do, just sparking those conversations within yourselves, in your group meetings, in your group texts, saying like, hey, today's the last day to complete the census. So who's done it? my2020census.gov. Saying, hey, what's your voting plan? Tweeting that out and putting it as a poll on your story, on your Instagram story, saying like, okay, y'all, we need to make a plan. Have you double checked your plan? Like, how are you going to go vote? I met somebody, I was not obeying COVID guidelines, but I was out in public in a social setting. And I met a young lady for the first time. And one of the first things I asked her is, how are you going to vote? So sparking those conversations in the barbershop, if you're going to get your hair cut, I know college kids are definitely still enjoying the social life, even if we aren't supposed to be, and that's why our numbers are spiking on campuses. But if you're in those settings, asking folks, hey, what's your voting plan? How are you going in person? Have you requested by mail? Have you tracked your ballot? Whatever that looks like. If a few of us have those first questions, then a lot of us can go a lot farther.
So much. Meredith, someone on our chat basically said we've heard a lot about Cuyahoga County. That's where this panel discussion is based in terms of the participants overall having a connection to Cuyahoga County. You did talk about going to the websites of your county BOE regarding postage, knowing what the postage is to mail your ballot back based on where you may live in Ohio or outside of Ohio, because people outside of Ohio may be tuning in to see us tonight. Anything else that you can share that would just be helpful on a larger geographic scale in that way for people who need more information?
Organization.
Sorry.
Oh, I'm sorry. There are national organizations out there, like the NAACP, for example. I wanted to take a play out of the vice president's playbook and say, Tanya, I want to use this time to talk about my sorority, for example. I am here, after all, representing Delta Sigma Theta Sorority Incorporated. And we have spent the summer basically executing the national initiative set forth by our president and CEO, Beverly Evans Smith. We've been focusing pretty much all year on census and this election. We've been very fortunate to conduct what we've been calling community checkups around the city with other Divine Nine organizations. I've worked with my brother here, who's a Kappa, Brother Clater. We kicked off our first one on August 1st. We went in all different kind of communities around the city of Cleveland that had low voter turnout expectations, as well as low census response rates. And I am just talking about the D9 as an organization that you can look to for leadership. You don't necessarily have to be involved in a sorority or a fraternity, but just know that we are part of the family. You can look to us for guidance if you have questions. We've been doing voter registration and getting applications completed. We've been helping people complete their census. We've been giving out fresh produce. We also helped people get immunizations and free COVID testing. So I know as an organization, these are some of our values, some of the things that we've been working on all year. I know that the Deltas on the Yard at Cleveland State University have been hosting similar events. So if you're on, one of the part of the citywide, be that BW, Ursuline, Cleveland State, however many colleges and universities we have in town, our collegiate chapter, Theta Eta, They're citywide, so they're all around. You can look to them as a resource for information. We have talked about Judge for Yourself tonight as a wonderful resource, where you can go and learn about the different judges that are on the ballot, be it Supreme Court, Appellate, Cuyahoga County Common Pleas, to learn how the bar associations have rated them as attorneys or as judges. That can help you make a decision. So there are a lot of resources out here on social media. If you just Google some of them, all types of things will pop out. But be an informed voter, but be a voter.
You may not know. Meredith? Very quickly, you referred to the Divine Nine. A lot of us know what the Divine Nine is, who the Divine Nine is, but not everyone does. So just quickly, a description before we wrap up.
Absolutely. The 9 Black Greek letter organizations that make up the Divine Nine. Help me out, Ifalu.
Yeah, the Divine Nine, historically black fraternities and sororities. I'm a member of Kappa Alpha Psi Fraternity Incorporated. Sister Meredith is a member of Delta Sigma Theta. There's Alpha Kappa Alpha Sorority Incorporated, Alpha Phi Alpha Fraternity Incorporated, Iota Phi Theta, Phi Beta Sigma, Zeta Phi Beta,
Omega?
and
Omega Psi Phi, Brother Tony Scott.
Panel together is a proud brother of Omega Psi Phi. So the Divine Nine historically black fraternities and sororities, and so they are present on many of our undergraduate campuses, as well as alumni chapters across the city. My alumni chapter, Greater Cleveland Alumni Chapter, actually is celebrating its centennial today. So shout out to the Cleveland, Ohio Alumni Chapter on our centennial today, actually October 15th. But our organizations all are here to serve the community, like we did with the Deltas in August, on August 1st, and really going into our communities, making sure they're registered, making sure they're getting counted in their census, because the census closes at 11:59 tonight.
Right.
So making sure that we are educating our communities. I know my undergraduate brothers who on Wilberforce's campus, Central State, Miami University, and Ohio State, and the University of Dayton, all were working to do voter registration before the deadline last week. So making sure that we are really engaging our communities in a meaningful way, and all of our organizations really work to do that on campus and in alumni life.
It's a beautiful legacy. Alana, one final word from you as well about what if you want to have anybody get a main takeaway from this, what would it be for you?
Stay informed and vote. Please vote. Encourage each other. I think that at this point, anyone who had the privilege and the chance to be on this call or any of the other panels and been inundated with any information, you now have a responsibility to share what you have learned to others. And even if you don't have all the answers, share what you do know, because each one teach one, and we all have a collective responsibility to make sure that we all vote and are participating in our electoral process. This is just one of many tools that we can use for Black liberation. It is one of the ones that our ancestors have fought for. And so it's our responsibility to make sure that we are doing our due diligence and that we are sharing the information, that we are having fun sometimes when we do it. Ife Olu mentioned using social media. There's often times where I'll just hop on Instagram or Twitter and just make a video and just answer questions and challenge some of my friends and challenge other people. So to really engage other people and really get them involved in the conversation, but understanding that as soon as you know something, you also do have a responsibility. There's many groups that are working on eliminating barriers. We have several groups that are doing a ride to polls. So even if you need a ride to the polls on election day, there are many groups. I dropped the link in the chat if you guys can see it. There's also Lyft. They usually do discounts on that day. So many community organizations and people are working to eliminate these barriers. If you have a neighbor who is struggling, who's elderly, who needs help getting to the polls or getting to the mailbox or the post office, make sure that you're stepping up and being that leader in your community and that you are helping everyone around you to make sure that they are able to participate in this election, because we all have that responsibility. Thank you.
Thank you. And you remind
Tanya, can I
that-
make a point? Can I
Okay.
make a point? Before we started talking about the Divine Nine, I wanted to remind people that one of the best ways of learning about the voting process, the electoral process, is by signing up to be a poll worker. And we still need more poll workers. We need Democrats and Republicans. Again, we do everything in a bipartisan fashion, but if you're really fascinated about how this process works, I would implore you to step up and be a poll worker. You can go to our website, download the application, complete it, very easy process. So you can vote, and that's contributing to your society, but you could also contribute by being a poll worker.
Thank you. What is the deadline?
We're hiring every day.
Okay.
We
I
need poll workers.
Answer. I've actually asked that question around the state of Ohio, but okay, you know what? We are going to wrap up. Thank you for encouraging people to become poll workers, and you're absolutely right. You get a up close and personal view of the process as part of a civic duty. Douglas Burnett, before I close, you will have the final word. What would you want to say, young man, if you can just take us on home, as they say, in about 20 seconds?
Of course, yes. Again, so I want to thank this organization for not only asking me, but once again for awarding me this scholarship. And I think this was such a dynamic panel filled with such dynamic individuals within our community who spoke on the importance of voting. We all know, we have seen it on full public display of what is really at stake in this election. So I really encourage everyone, just seriously, if you're registered to vote, vote, and do so early. Don't wait till November 3rd. Do it early and do it now.
Thank you very much. And you have just been excellent, as has Tashawn Simon, who could not stay with us for the full length of this panel. We lost Alana for a moment. You've been great. Thank you. I know you got to go somewhere. Take care. We know that the people who are watching us also have other responsibilities. I just want to share a few announcements for you. I want to remind everybody what you've been watching and listening to in terms of this forum. This has been a Young Professionals Forum, and it is presented by the Black Professional Association Charitable Foundation. Avery Dennison has been a wonderful sponsor of this forum, and we are grateful for that. There will be another forum. The next virtual forum will be at 7 p.m. on October 29th, and it will be based on social justice, racial equity. That's what the theme will be. It is sponsored by Avery Dennison again, and it will feature Ms. Normella Walker, Judge William Dawson, Dr. Ronnie Dunn, who is actually at Cleveland State, I'm pretty sure, Dr. Ronnie Dunn, and it will be moderated by Alex Stokes of Fox 8 News. I also want to let you know about the virtual gala that is sponsored by the Black Professional Association Charitable Foundation, celebrating 40 years. All of the wonderful work that they have done, the lives they have influenced, the professionals that they have continued to cultivate in terms of talent, encouraging people, developing opportunities, working with corporations, creating opportunities. So this 40-year anniversary will be Saturday, November 14th. And it's at 6:30 p.m. They're going virtual, and you can find more information at bpacf.org. And you can find out more information in that on that website. And keep in mind, Douglas is one of the beneficiaries, and we know this is a young man who's going to be giving back to society in so many ways, as will Tyshawn of Cleveland State University. My name is Tanya Strong Charles. I'm an executive producer with Spectrum News 1 Ohio, and we thank you for your time tonight, and we encourage you to vote. Good night.